there is security. You want to defend yourself, your soldiers, your airmen, your seamen. The second one...
Damn childish. They damn childish. I tell you, every day I tell them, why are you so childish?
Why should we care about the budget? This is your daily catch-up.
Ka-ching!
Today's episode is proudly sponsored by the National Youth Council Singapore.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Very good to have you.
Is this the most boliao thing you've done this year?
Maybe just today.
I see. Oh, I see. Exciting life. Before filming, we talked about, you were sharing that you were from the private sector and you were the only of your vintage lah.
My
You were the
vintage.
only few that came from the private sector and joined the government, right? How was that for you?
Well, there are two of us, myself as well as Minister Tan See Leng, and we came from the private sector back in 2020 when we joined the government after the elections. So, and it's been quite a ride. One of the DPM Heng asked me, Alvin, how have you settled down to government? And the first thing I said is, DPM, there are a lot of emails.
Did you have to change the way you spoke publicly? Because I just want to say, like being very fortunate to have had ministers and spoken, you have that minister speak.
Yeah. You're quite ministerial already.
Yeah, so...
Like got training or not?
They watch a video from the 90s, that kind, this is how you should talk.
Yeah.
You can switch it on, you can switch it off. Yeah, but I think there are also very different audiences that you have to communicate with. So I have a couple of different hats. One is at the Ministry of Trade and Industry. So you got to wear your suit, your tie. You're speaking to CEOs. You're speaking to other trade ministers, doing trade deals. So there's a different formality to it. Then if I'm going to maybe MAS, which is the Monetary Authority of Singapore, then you're speaking about finance. You're speaking about economics. Then of course there is a certain vernacular and certain words that you use. I see vernacular, very chim words, right?
Good. Once in a while, you gotta drop it. Not people think you're not smart. Yeah.
Right. So at every different juncture, you have to communicate also very differently.
Yeah.
But you're able to code switch. You're able to change. Speak different languages, speak different styles.
So obviously we had to look you up for the interview and all, right? And so a lot of specific names came up that you were a VP and executive director at Goldman Sachs. You were head of
Imagine
policy at
quitting that job,
Facebook, and then you also did something similar at LinkedIn. What made you go from really private sector damn shock jobs to go, okay, you know what, let me subject myself to the public scrutiny, the public eye, and become a politician?
We ask this to everybody, okay? You don't feel weirded out by it. We just cannot figure out why would someone want to take the job.
That's right. I ask myself every night. Yeah. Those jobs are incredible. They've given me a good foundation and an understanding of the world. I share with you something that was very, very special. So when Prime Minister asked me to join government and then also say, hey, you have to quit your job, I obviously you have to think through these very, very carefully. At that time, it was July or August 2020, right? And we are in the throes of the crisis which is still unfolding. So I thought to myself, if next time, 20, 30 years time, I'm 60, if we get through this crisis and we hopefully make the right decisions and we navigate Singapore through this, I mean, it's impactful, right?
Yeah, you can say you were part of it.
Yeah, you can say, I can tell my grandchildren or whatever, right? I say, last time, Papa jumped right in.
Yeah.
We made those decisions and this was the story. I tell you, it's better than, Papa made this amount in the private sector. You make a lot of interesting decisions in the private sector. But the decisions that you make for people, especially in a crisis in the public sector, these are things that I will never forget. Because these are impactful, They are really, really impactful.
Okay, I see now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for drawing it out, guys.
Different.
Yeah. Good job. No, good job. We asked a lot of people. They all they just tell, I love the country. And then I also love the country.
Yeah.
But I also love my wife, you know what I mean? How does your wife see this job switch? Because I'm sure her lifestyle changes.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Oh, confirm.
Because we have two young ones, and of course she has to bear the brunt of raising them. That is the key thing. But when we went together, when we decided, I would not have done it without her. And when we decided, then we know that the whole family serves together.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, for example, last night, right, I'm back maybe about 11 something. And Joy sometimes she'll do her best.
Sorry, Joyce, your
My wife.
Okay.
So if she's not too tired, she would just make the effort to heat up the soup. That's also a love language.
Yeah.
Which I really appreciate. In addition to everything else that she does.
Yeah.
Also, heard that during NS your girlfriend broke up with you, or you broke up with your girlfriend, or something happened lah.
I think in those times sometimes there's guys are may probably mature less faster.
Yeah.
So I think that happened, and then you grow lah. You don't rely on somebody else to define your identity. Yeah. So I think over time then you mature, and I realized, and we got back together after that.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Is she your wife?
Yeah.
Oh! Stop right there! Stop right there!
Trying to channel Denise.
Wow, cannot, yeah. But what you can do is to share and subscribe and to like this video. Back to the episode.
Your first girlfriend?
Not first, but my last.
Nice.
As far as we know. Okay, I don't know why I said that. I'm so sorry.
So there's like so many different like ministers, right? So you got ministers, and then you got ministers of state, and then
Senior
you got
ministers of state.
senior ministers of state. Like, what are the main differences? So like, what do you do as a minister of state?
Basically, the ministers of state and the senior ministers of state are your what they call junior ministers.
Okay.
Yeah. So within the ministry, there is a lot of work, right? And so the minister helms the ministry, but then we help to support.
Yeah.
You all the ones doing the work now.
You're the
All
interns.
of us do the work lah. Yeah, this kind of thing.
So tying this back to when you mentioned about the connections, right, of the different ministries and like youth and talking about the economy and stuff like that. It actually brings us to why we brought you onto the show in the first place, which is actually to talk about budget. So I think like the first question that we have on our mind, right, especially when National Youth Council came to us with the brief to talk about budget was, wait a minute, how does the budget even get allocated? Like, how does it get decided? What do the ministries have to do to like fight for budget for themselves?
Mm-hmm. So the budget is a really, really important time of the year, because just as you are allocating time for your or money for your household expenditure, you also need to have a budget, right? So for example, if you're going on a trip, so you need to budget. How much do I want to spend for air travel or train? How much do I want to spend for shopping? How much do I want to spend for sightseeing? There's finite. But then there's actually one more step before that, which is how do I even get the funds to go and buy an air ticket, to buy a suitcase, or to buy tickets for attraction.
Sure.
And that is the revenue portion. So to put it very simply, that's how it is. In the same way, when you run a country, you first need to have the revenue, right? And the revenue comes from a variety of sources. First is you get investments. Second is you probably loan. And third is also you tax. Yeah. So you need to grow that pie, right? Once you have that pie, then you need to allocate, okay, now what do I spend on? And there are many things to do, there are many things to spend on in a country. There is security. You want to defend yourself, your soldiers, your airmen, your seamen. The second one,
They damn childish. I tell you, every day I tell them, why are you so childish?
Seriously. We all three smart.
No, they damn childish, really. I don't know why. No, I myself am a seaman.
you were.
I am a seaman. We all learn to swim and seaman, yeah.
Okay, balik.
Balik. No, don't balik. Just carry on. Just push through. You're saying
So
seaman.
you spend on security, you spend on housing, you have to spend on your hospitals, you have to spend on your education, then you have to spend on your businesses. So in that case, all of the different ministries, so you have Ministry of Health, you have Ministry of Trade, you have Ministry of Home Affairs, all of these different ministries, including my ministries, will have to say, okay, this is my plan for the year, right? And we plan to spend on this, and this. So we come up with this plan, we allocate, and then we submit it to the Ministry of Finance. They look at it, and then the budget is.
How detailed is your plan? Like,
It is
you
incredibly
know
detailed.
exactly.
Well, we work together with an incredible team at the ministries to come up with it, and then they will send it to us, and then we allocate it. But there's also another process, which is the consultation with different segments of Singaporeans.
Okay.
For the MTI side, we will consult with businesses, right, and see how we can either support businesses or help to bring investments into Singapore. Because if you bring investment in Singapore, then you create more jobs, better for all of us, right? Yeah. So that's how that comes
Right.
into play.
A cynical mind or a skeptical mind would because there's going to be trade-offs, right? There's only a
That's
finite
right.
amount of money.
That's right.
So then, if you're a minister or a MOS of a certain portfolio, and you know that, for example, like in your capacity at MTI, you're speaking to all these different businesses, and you obviously want to have good relationship with them, so you want to have extra budget to be able to bail them out and
Yes.
stuff like that, right? How do you then like have to, I don't know, balance out the trade-offs, knowing that, okay, healthcare is obviously important, but I also have my own things that I need to also care about and like look after. It also, I guess, in some ways make me look good as, because I'm doing my job in that sense. Like, how do you balance all those trade-offs?
Yeah, so the trade-offs are incredibly important because you have a finite number of resources, amount of resources. What do you allocate? And so that's why different ministries account for different proportions of the budget.
Okay, but is it pre-allocated that already, okay, defense is
No.
confirm going to take 30% or?
Not quite. I mean, there is always that discussion
Right, okay.
as to how you want to allocate. And for example, if you were to, if for example that year you may not need so many aircraft or anything, maybe that you adjust it
I see.
downwards. For I think healthcare is now rising, so healthcare, Ministry of Health, you will need much more. Yeah. So there's a lot of now demand for us to spend a lot more on healthcare. There are new drugs, there are new gene therapy, for example. So we have to think carefully. Whatever you spend on the seniors, right? There's also a cost, because then do you have less to spend on education for the young? So there's naturally all of these trade-offs.
In formulating these budgets, you always see like a lot of ads, right? Like maybe the ministers themselves come and say, or some campaign, right? For Singaporeans to voice out. I mean, consultation with business owners, I see that. I can see how that works.
Yeah.
But with the general Singaporean, how valuable is that data, to be very honest? I will feel like everybody just feel like, as long as my house is too expensive, I'll just say, oh, shit's getting expensive. I want a car, I can't buy a car. Car's too expensive. And wouldn't that dominate 95% of...
But that's quite natural, because the budget will affect you at the most intimate. If I were to be spending, for example, on education, how much, what's the subsidy for my school fees? For healthcare, what is my subsidy at the polyclinic? So these things matter. Right now, I know that we're facing a cost of living concerns. There's one thing that's quite important to know. One is that for the last 10 or so years, actually interest rates were super, super duper low.
Yep.
Yeah. Now, in fact, the interest rates are normalizing. If you look at the history of interest rates.
No, we have to get used to this level of interest rates. Is that what you're saying?
But because for 10 years, it's almost zero,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the
we like that.
the context matters. It builds up inflation. Because there's so much liquidity,
Yeah.
money needs to find a place to go, right? Interest rates is basically the cost of money. Right? So it's so cheap, then it inflates
Yeah.
different assets, you see. People have more liquidity, so they just plow into different things. So there's a bit of a normalization of interest rates now that we're seeing. Yeah.
So bring this back quickly to youth, right?
Yes.
Also, to remind everyone, youth are between the ages of 15 to 34. So
All of us.
3 of us still make it. So sorry, MOS Alvin. But too far away. So anyway, right,
Yeah, it's youth, man.
given the aging population, I was actually surprised to find out that youth make up less than 20% of Singapore's total population. So when, say, opportunities for feedback on budget and things like that, right, come into play, and you know that, we're only going to make less than 20% of the people who are actually bringing up all these like issues. How, does it mean that their concerns are going to get
20% weightage?
Like diluted amongst the concerns of the people?
Yeah.
Like how do we make sure that they are heard?
The youth, although they represent only 20% of our population, they represent 100% of our future. Some, will be, business leaders. Some will be national leaders, for example, or non-profit leaders, right? So for the youth, we need to invest in them. And how do we invest in them? We invest in them through education, and that is the social compact. Because if you have a finite budget, why would you go and invest in youth? It seems now very natural to say that, because in the end, when you invest in youth, they in the end will be the most productive. In their most productive years, they will produce value like what you guys are doing.
They're early stage companies in that sense.
Yes, and then they contribute to a tax pool that then ultimately government can allocate.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's an investment in the future. When you invest in youth, you're investing in the future.
And thanks for not saying that in a political way,
Yeah.
What's
No.
the political way to say it?
That you
because
just love the youth, it's like youth's the future of the country.
And then
No, but not only that, I think like people do use the term investing in youth in a very fleeting way, but you're also saying in a very technical fiscal way in which they will contribute to the tax pool in the future.
Yeah.
So it makes sense.
But I know it can sound like very utilitarian, but it's actually not.
No,
right?
yeah,
Because you want the most productive in your society. There is our working years, ma. And the working years, you're most productive. Like all of you are very, you're young, you have new ideas, you're fresh, you're creating revenue.
Yeah.
But in any society, you cannot like take all the revenue for yourself, ma.
Yeah.
Right? But in fact, what you're doing is then the government takes that, we build your roads, we make sure that you are protected from wars, we make sure that you all have healthcare. The more we invest, for example, in healthcare, is that if more of us are healthier, right? That means we don't fall sick. That actually helps us. Because later on, then we will have to invest less in maybe looking after
Healthcare,
seniors. And I guess now, in many terms, we think about it, I want to get this now, Yeah. But if you wait, you grow it, actually it's much better.
So when you mention things like healthcare for the youth, right? Then that overlaps between two industries, right? Two ministries, right? So is it like MCCY is in charge or is...
Yeah. So MCCY looks after youth across. Yeah, so youths that are aged between 15 to 35.
Why 35?
When I met the CEO of NYC,
NYC.
David, I think when we were first introduced, right, he was 35. And then that was when he was introducing to us that the youth, that was the first time I heard it, that youths are aged 16 to 35. What I'm trying to say is that I think he just wanted to include himself for one more year. Mr. David, I like you, not making fun.
He's a good guy.
He's great.
So budget's coming up, right? And I mean, before as a business owner, I do watch the budget. No, I was gonna ask you that. Like, why should the youth why should they care in watching the budget? Since you are relatively, honestly, like new to government service.
So if I were youth and when I was youth, I didn't really watch the budget, to be honest.
It's dry lah, let's be
It
honest.
is, I mean, just frankly, it's very dry, but actually it's very important. So as I mentioned earlier, we have finite resources.
Yeah.
And how do we allocate? Do we allocate it for healthcare? How would it help you in your education? If you want to learn more in the skills future, can we provide even more support for you and skills future is not just the credits, by the way, is if you are working in a company, then we provide the company some more support to train you so you can develop new skills to get new jobs. Or if you are studying, a youth who is studying, can we provide even more support for you in terms of your university education, your post-secondary education, and the likes? For business, John, when I was not in government and when I was in business, I always look forward to the budget for a few reasons. First, I want to know what is this government, or any government for that matters, the way of managing your finances, your fiscal position, your monetary policy, how do you use your budget? I also want to know how you are thinking, whether then if you are a country that keeps looking out for the future, are you investing in research? And we have set aside $25 billion over the next 5 years for research, innovation and enterprise. That means that we are not just content to just sit down and let the world dictate what do we do, but we are investing in research, we're investing in alternative proteins, we're investing in advanced manufacturing, all of these future opportunities, so that we are not just stagnant.
Yeah.
For investment professionals, we always look at the respective budgets. And the finance minister, of course, is the most important in that regard to allocate, because he has to talk to all of the different ministries.
Tough for his job. I mean, all of your jobs tough, sure. But what his job though?
I think the finance minister, because he also needs to understand across all of the ministries.
Yeah. Like, okay, so I tell you why I watch it, right? Maybe not at a level that you do. Mine's a lot more utilitarian. I watch it because I've always understood the Singapore government budget, right, to be about 5 to 10 years ahead. So you invest in something, in R&D, you don't expect this to be a thing next year on. And that's why I think it's very relevant to watch it when you are younger. I will watch the budget to understand which course of education I will take. Because you know this comes into fruition in the next 5 to 10 years.
Which career path eventually.
Correct. And you look at displacement. Because clearly, there are times where you can see certain industries that's going into a sunset. And the government cannot look at your business and say, yo, you know what? I think you all should all close down and pivot. They cannot, because maybe you can make it. And they cannot demoralize you. But you see the way they are pushing industries, see the way they are pushing pivots and trying to find opportunities for certain industries. For example, there's one notorious one. I think it was called the PIC scheme, right? Help companies, companies can make claims to buy laptop, computer.
And all, yeah.
This is so crazy. This was a time when not everybody's company got computer.
Buy iPads.
Yeah, and that was a time you could see very clearly. I mean, to be honest, that scheme was abused left, right, center. But you could see the priorities of the country at that point of time, that we need to digitize as a country. Yeah. And then you would see that was the time where if you were in, for example, IT security or just joining the IT department, for example, it was so lucrative in that era. Yeah. And so this is, I mean, that, and then you see how much money you get. But how much money you get at the end, to be honest, is a padding, right? That's perhaps the motivation to watch, but it's the padding for the next 1 year and 2 years. But it's the really boring stuff that you should watch for to know what the country is prioritizing and seeing what's to come in the next 5-10 years. Because there are a lot of things that it's not that the government cannot say, but they shouldn't say. Yeah. And so you understand the priorities knowing that they know more than you. Yeah, that's why I watch the budget.
Anyway, did you all know that there have been like public exercises to like get feedback on things like budget and all these other stuff?
I do.
Oh, yeah
I've
lah.
never done it.
Well, we just had one last night.
Gen 18.
Yeah, on January the 18th,
Okay.
with our youths. So myself and SMS Cheong Tat, we were at the Asian Civilizations Museum, and we had about 160 youths.
Okay.
And they did this exercise where they voted individually on what is most important to them, the issue is most important to them. Then they have this thing, what we call quadratic voting, where you vote as a group.
This quadratic voting thing is really interesting. Dan, can you take us through it really quickly?
Okay, so like, I mean, from what I was reading, right, it's basically you have like, say, I mean, in this example, for example, you have 99 credits. And then if you want to place one vote for one particular issue, you use up 1 credit. But if there are 2 votes for another issue, it is 1 to the power of 2. So then you're now using up 4 credits instead of 2 credits. And so then you really, really have to think which are the most important issues at this point in time, because more votes for one equals a way, like an exponential rise in like credits.
It's a way to kind of defend or deter when people say, okay, what's important to you? Then they just think about the 3 things that's not important to them.
Yeah.
And then they just vote the rest 1 each. Yeah. So this kind of defeats that, help you prioritize the thinking process, which I thought was, I never heard of this until
but
he told me.
A lot of the individual voting differs from the group voting, because some say, okay, I need to have more support for the vulnerable. Some say climate change is important. Some say mental well-being is important. Some say jobs and job security is important.
on the individual level.
At the individual level, and then when they move to the quadratic voting, the group level, then their decisions change. People have very different interests. The young might say, you should spend more on me, right? The old might say you should spend more on me vis-a-vis healthcare, right? So there are always different groups that want different things.
So you almost like mimicked what it was like between the ministers as they were like negotiating for their own budget. I
think that, everyone obviously will have to fight and make the case rather for their ministries. But I think in government, we are a team.
Okay.
So we definitely do understand. I mean, of course, I would like maybe say, I want arts, I want to give a lot, or I want sports, give this amount. But I think because of a group, we always are talking, we always know where, how to work together as a team. Yeah, then you are able to say, okay, this one, I also understand how defense is important, or education is important, or health is important. Yeah.
Speaking of budget, right? And like putting out the budget. Some random thought. I was thinking about driving, right? I was just like telling my wife about it. It's so crazy, right? That in, I think 1966, 1967, when Lee Kuan Yew envisioned a garden city, the country was shit poor. We still have people living in the slums. And this man is like, you know what? Let's buy a ton of plants and trees and plant around Singapore, and we need to pay for the pruning and the watering and all that shit. And then it got approved, you don't realize how wild that is or not? It's like, so what the country doesn't need at that point of time, man.
Yeah.
Like on hindsight, we love it lah. Really very nice. I got shade, got trees and plants now. But it's like back then when the country was poor, it's like, you know what? I would like a garden. And then everybody's like, okay.
Let's do it. Yeah.
How the hell?
He was very specific.
They must be so scared of him also.
He was very specific about the type of like plants and trees and flowers.
Yeah. No, we spent a lot of money on it. I think many people don't know that we got botanists from New Zealand and Australia to come and advise Singapore on how to make our grass green. Because our grass was not bright green. It was like yellowish green.
And one of the reasons is because we were at the stage of development where we are also
starting tourism, is it?
And also attracting investments into Singapore. And if you were to land in Changi, that whole stretch, he was focused on that stretch.
I see.
Right? So you beautify it, you put in your plants, your bougainvilleas, your green plants and trees. And so when you make a first good impression.
Yeah. Right.
When an investor comes, or a business person comes, it's like, okay, this country is well run, well pruned trees. It's the first impression, and then companies then say, okay, this is a place that I want to invest my money, and then you start to grow Singapore. So the attention to detail is there, and it wasn't very in vogue to be green, right? Now it's like everybody's like green.
Yeah,
green.
now it makes sense.
Yeah.
But back then when we were poor at that time, it feels like a right.
It felt like a stretch, but it makes so much sense.
Yeah,
but
you needed to be like, guys, I have a plan. I need y'all to just run. You know what I mean?
Once again, I'd like to thank our sponsors for today's episode, National Youth Council Singapore, and also thank you, MOS Alvin, for joining us today.
Thank you, guys.
Good job.
Really. So we hope that today's conversation would have shed a bit more light about the budget, give you better understanding about what to look forward to and why you should care about it. And if you need more information, head down to the website down below. It's www.mof.gov.sg/Singapore budget. Also, www has 9 syllables, but the World Wide Web is 3. Why do we abbreviate it that way?
True.
Anyway, check out the link down below in the description box. Bye-bye.
We might.
Y'all want to take a recess? I would love to pee.
There was one last question that I didn't ask yet.
Yeah, Charlene,
but it was just the last
why don't you
question.
just go take a pee first?
I'll go and take a pee first. Thank you.
Yeah.